thank you very much for inviting me today to speak with you. The role of cyberspace is tremendously important because it allows Russia to challenge Ukraine as well as the rest of the West in a symmetric way, which it would be much more difficult for Russia to do using kinetic use of force. So this is what I always like to emphasize, a non-nuclear strategic weapon for Russia. And if you go back even 20 years ago with Russia's military strategy, it really tells you all you need to know how much Russia pays attention to cyberspace, because it allows Russia to, as I said, to challenge the West, but also to harm the West and then not to take responsibility for it. Right now, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, I think even since the very beginning, Russia was certainly very aggressive in the cyberspace, and United States and the rest of the West expressed numerous concerns when it comes to cybersecurity. And I have to admit that even though some people probably are a little bit confused that we haven't seen any cyber attack yet, I really don't think that the threat is away. I think the United States is doing a great job in terms of defensive measures along with our allies from the Western Europe. But as I said, cybersecurity is a serious thing. Cyberspace is an opportunity for Russia to challenge the West. And what you may have noticed, it's not only Russia's threat in Ukraine, but elsewhere in the West, but also in Russia's proxy places. For example, what recently happened in Montenegro, where the government actually expresses its concerns that it could be Russia. And the reason why that matters is because it can also, trigger. Russia can trigger and to see how the Western countries should respond. And this is why it's tremendously important for the West to be united when it comes to cyberspace and to provide help to all its allies. First of all, I would even go back to many years ago, including like 2015, when Russia's APT-28 actually successfully breached the networks of the Pentagon, for example, or at the very same year when Russia's APT-29 successfully breached unclassified networks of the White House, for example, or the State Department. So it's not only about the last year. What we are seeing right now is certainly Russia would love to, challenge the United States, as I said, in cyberspace and to harm our critical infrastructure, because that would be an asymmetric way to challenge the United States. No way that Russia would be willing, to send nuclear missiles to the United States at this point, but Russia certainly is trying to harm the United States in that way. I have to say that since the Russia's aggression in Ukraine started in February, numerous federal agencies, including American Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, for example, the National Security Agency and the FBI, they actually warned of potential cyber attacks on the critical infrastructure. What they did, they actually also put, they've been warning in every possible media about this to businesses and everything, but they also provided very clear guidelines to businesses, for example, how to shield themselves and how to protect them. Right thing to do. And let's also not forget that even in April this year, cybersecurity authorities of the United States, Australia, Canada, I think it was New Zealand and United Kingdom, they actually published something that was called a joint cybersecurity advisory to warn organizations that Russia's aggression of Ukraine will actually pose cybersecurity threats to those countries. Begin with what's happening right now in Ukraine. I think Ukraine should actually teach us in the West how to protect ourselves from Russia's threats in the information space. Let's not forget that Russia was very, very active back in 2014 with its cybersecurity attacks on Ukraine. So I think right now, Ukraine is still, under the threat of Russia's cybersecurity threats, that's for certain. What we need to do, the United States should continue providing Ukraine with intelligence, as we've been doing, since February, when we warned about the war. That's number one thing. Second thing is, I want to emphasize that in the Russia's military strategy, there is not even a word cybersecurity. What they're talking about, it's actually information security. And why that matters? It matters because we need to understand that Russia understands cybersecurity in a very different way than we understand in the West. So number one thing is that in order to win this cyber war, if I may call it this way, against Russia, we need to perceive it in the same way. What does it mean? It's not only about attacks on critical infrastructures. Russia also includes information operations as part of its cyber security doctrine, and it perceives it in a very holistic way. So, for example, every single cyber attack is followed by very aggressive information operations, and vice versa. We really need to counter Russia in the information space in a holistic way by defending our critical infrastructure. That's number one thing. And second thing is to defend our information, the information space from Russia's information operations. But if I may also put it, we also need to fire back and to give the Moscow the taste of its own medicine by also launching information operations inside Russia's information space. I couldn't agree more with you, because we've been on the defense for many, many years, and that's exactly what Russia wants. Russia wants us to be on the defensive in the information space so they can run the narrative. So we need to spend our energy and resources on defending ourselves. And that's not a right thing to do. I think we should put Russia on the defensive and run our information operations, but providing new narratives, as you mentioned, for example, in the West, about Ukrainian history, because Russia has been working very hard to, even in the West, to rewrite Ukrainian history. And that's something that we should be doing. But as I said, it's not only about Russia's information operations inside of Ukraine or within the Russia's information space or in the West. I think the West have done quite marvelous job since February by protecting themselves from Russia's information operations on numerous social media platforms. But it's not enough, because Russia is using a very the tactic is that they go they provide their narratives via different for example, blogs and smaller social media accounts. And this is how they spread the messages. That's number one thing. The second thing is, for example, I'll give you the latest thing, like what's happening right now in Africa. Russia has been working very hard to blame the United States for its own aggression in Ukraine, and basically to claim that for the food crisis, it's the United States that are responsible. And while it's very nice, to write all those narratives, false versus like a truth, in terms of reports, that's not enough, because people don't read those things. In Africa, I'm afraid, Russia has done quite, marvelous job in completely occupying the information space with their own narratives against Ukraine. And now someone would wonder, who cares what's happening in Africa? Well, we should all care for several different reasons. Because once you provide the narrative that for the food shortages, it's the responsibility of the West, such food shortages can actually lead to social unrest, and social unrest may actually lead to further refugee crisis. What we are seeing right now in the middle of Europe with numerous rallies, they're followed by very strong information operations. And I could not agree more with you that it's really high time for the West to stop defending itself, but rather to put the narratives forward and put Russia to defend itself. So, yes.